Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Death's Door by E.A. Copen, narrated by Travis Baldree. Chapter 1. Cold enveloped my body, pulling me down into an abyss of emptiness. Wind howled. Distant thunder rolled against the cawing of crows. I opened my eyes in a dark cave. Roots hung from the ceiling, reaching downward like thin, hungry fingers. Rocky, red ground stretched into a black chasm beneath my feet. Rickety wood crossed the gap. Shreds of spiderwebs and rotten vegetation dripped from the trusses, flapping in the wind. So, this was Helheim, Viking hell. I wasn't sure what to expect when I lay down in the morgue and drank dew from the fabled world tree, but an underground bridge wasn't at the top of the list. They could have at least sent out a welcoming party. It wasn't like they didn't know I was coming. From where I stood atop a massive boulder, the path down to the bridge wasn't clear. I'd have to climb over sharp rocks in darkness. The only light came from whatever was beneath the bridge, a silver-blue glow the color of moonlight. Behind me, a solid wall barred my path back. Forward was the only way out, though getting out was the least of my concerns. First, I had to find Emma. To do that, I needed to get down those rocks and cross a bridge. No biggie, considering I'd killed plenty of gods to get this far. A bridge was nothing. Before I took that first step, I flexed my fingers and felt something solid in my right hand. My staff had somehow come with me. I'd been holding it over my chest when I closed my eyes in the morgue, but I hadn't expected it to materialize in the after. There were plenty of cultures that believed important possessions could follow the soul into the afterlife, but I'd never believed it personally. Until now. I was glad for the staff, though. If I had a staff, I had my magic. At least I hoped I did. I sat down on the rock to let my legs dangle over the edge. With a grunt, I dropped to the next rock and steadied myself. I waited for something to happen, for the rocks to crumble under my weight or some unseen enemy to jump me. That sounded exactly like the kind of trick Loki would play. Send the Pale Horseman to the after in search of his girlfriend's soul, and then let giant mutant honey badgers gnaw off his face. Nothing happened. I let out the breath I'd been holding. Girlfriend. I guess that wasn't right either. Emma and I weren't technically an item, because I'd screwed that up too. I navigated my path down from the rocks carefully, inching ever closer to the bridge. From up top, it had looked small, no bigger than an overpass. The closer I got, the bigger it became. It stretched so far up that I had to lean back to see the top of the pillars holding it in place. Gods, man, they never do anything halfway. The noise I had mistaken for thunder grew louder. When I reached the bottom of the rock pile, it was a deafening cacophony of clashing and crashing, metal against metal. I leaned over the edge to investigate the chasm below. The river flowing beneath the bridge wasn't made of water, but of weapons. Swords, spears, guns, slings, and arrows. Every instrument of war from the exotic to the mundane flowed like water through a boiling blue mist and over a waterfall, moving deeper into the after. Crows called to me from above as I stepped onto the bridge. It swayed in the wind, and under my weight, boards shifting and groaning. 2 steps out, the swaying was so bad I had to stop. My stomach lurched, and panic fluttered in my chest. I leaned on the frayed rope to the side. The river of weapons loomed dangerously close. I forced my eyes closed. Come on, Lazarus. It's only a bridge. Who would traverse the way to hell? Demanded a loud female voice. I was wondering when I'd run into a guardian of some kind. I shoved away from the side of the bridge, swallowed the rising bile in my throat, and pressed forward. At the end of the bridge was the biggest, fiercest-looking woman I had ever seen. Standing as tall as 2.5 men, she wore a dress made of bones. Her helmet was the skull of a dragon. White hair flowed from beneath it. In the darkness, it looked like she had a ghost on her head. A great club as big as a small tree rested against her shoulder. Her expression remained carefully neutral as she said, State your name and business here, stranger." I stopped and drew myself up to stand straight, despite the swaying bridge. "My name is Lazarus Kerrigan. I'm the Pale Horseman. I've come to retrieve the soul of Emma Knight." My voice caught as I said the last part, my throat too tight to let the words out properly. I didn't know if her soul was here or in some other part of the after, but here had to be my first stop. Emma had known what was going to happen to her, so she had left me the vial of sap as a clue. I had assumed she'd left it to help me get her back, but I didn't know that for sure. What if she didn't want to come back with me? What if she couldn't? She'd traded her soul to Lucifer Morningstar to keep me from turning into a ghoul. This was the price she'd paid to save me, and it hadn't seemed like there were any loopholes in her contract. I pushed the thought away. Emma represented everything that was good and right in the world for me. Without her, I didn't know how I would continue. Even with Remy, my daughter, waiting for me, going back to a world without Emma would feel empty. I needed her with me. To get her back, I'd crawl through 100 hells and cross 1,000 rivers of rushing death. The giantess nodded and stepped aside. "Welcome to Helvacre, horseman, the road to hell. If you seek the gates of hell, you must go farther down and to the north, but I warn you, no living soul may pass through the gates and return." I nodded. "Thanks for the tip." She stood like a stalwart statue, making no answer. I shrugged and pressed on. Beyond the bridge, the path diverged. One fork wove into a narrow canyon, so dark all I could see was the opening. The other flowed straight into a grove of naked thorn bushes. Without the sky to guide me, finding north seemed impossible. I turned back to the giantess and found her back to me. She'd returned to her post guarding the bridge and would be no help. Let's see. If I were a Norse god, how would I decorate the path to the land of dishonored dead? I glanced at the canyon. Dark and creepy, the perfect place to get jumped by something evil, but not the road I'd choose to send a bad guy on. I sighed and turned to the thorn bushes. Well, at least I'm already dead. I adjusted my clothes to cover more of me, just in case. It can't hurt if you're dead, right? I was wrong. Oh, so very wrong. Thorns like knives ripped open my clothing and tore into my skin, leaving stinging gashes behind. Blood trailed from my wounds, pooling in joints and in my shoes. The dead didn't bleed, did they? Maybe I wasn't as dead as I'd hoped. Being a necromancer had its advantages, even without taking the Pale Horseman mantle into consideration. I could talk to ghosts, shades, and spirits. I could interact with the land of the dead while still on Earth in a living body. Doing so required me to form a bridge between the realm of the living and the land of the dead, the after, with my magic. Since becoming the Pale Horseman, that bridge had been much easier to craft. On several occasions, I had pushed my physical body into the after, a realm reserved for the incorporeal. Doing that didn't come without risks. For one, if I hung out too long in the after, I didn't think I could come back, not completely. I worried that part of me would be left behind. It also meant I drew spirits to me like a beacon, and not all of them were friendly. While they couldn't attack my physical body so long as I was anchored on Earth, they could rip apart my psyche, destroying my mind and soul. That'd be a hell of a lot worse than dying. As I pushed my way through the thorns, I caught myself worrying that the sap had severed my anchor to Earth, and this was all just a projection of myself into the after. What if I had gone too far and couldn't get back? I had a daughter to go back to, a life. Responsibilities that I had just walked away from because the woman I loved was damned to hell and it was all my fault. She didn't deserve it, but did Remy deserve to grow up without a father? Did Nate deserve to have to explain the strange body in the morgue to his bosses? I'd said fuck the consequences and just went for it. What if that was the wrong move? I broke through the thorn bushes and found a huge fence topped in razor wire. On the other side, a smaller fence, also topped in razor wire, formed a narrow walkway. Every so often a guard tower rose, patrolled by pale-faced ghosts. Beyond the gate squatted a towering brick building. Iron mesh crisscrossed every window. Son of a bitch. Of course, hell would be a fucking prison I'd have to break into. Getting in wasn't going to be easy. No way I was going to get over all that razor wire. The thorn bushes were one thing, but the way razor wire was designed, I'd either gouge a cut deep enough to sever an important artery, or I'd bleed to death. The guards in the tower would see me for sure. Going through the gate wasn't an option. I was bleeding enough to convince me I was still alive in some capacity, and the giantess had said no living thing could pass through the gate and leave again. I had to scale the fence. But how? I grabbed the fence, just to think. A siren blared. Shit! I let go of the fence, but it was too late. I'd already alerted everyone for miles that I was there. Spotlights danced over the yard, zooming for the gate in search of me. Bloodhounds brayed. Voices rose, shouting orders. I backed away from the fence. Shit, Lazarus, think! I could turn and run back into the thorn bushes, maybe wait for the heat to die down, but chances were good the dogs would sniff me out. Hissing to my left made me turn my head. A figure hunched near the edge of a nearby thorn bush, face hidden by a black cloak. Dark, curly hair spilled from beneath the hood. "Come," the person croaked. "Come or they will find you and take you through the gate." I cast one more look out over the prison grounds, in time to see several fiery dogs racing toward the fence. Hellhounds? "Can you get me inside?" "Yes, yes," the figure hissed through their teeth. "Come, there is always a door for death." Go with a stranger or risk being caught by the guardians of hell? It wasn't a hard choice. I turned and ran from the prison gates, following the figure. Chapter 2. Squat plants flew by while the sirens screamed. I followed the figure through what seemed like an endless expanse of black desert stretching around the prison. Questions burned, begging to be asked, but I kept them to myself. The more noise we made, the easier it would be for them to track us. Running from dogs and prison guards took me back to my own incarceration. I'd never tried to escape while I was an inmate, but one person I knew tried to scale the fence to retrieve a football full of contraband. His buddy on the outside tossed it over the fence, and he went for it. They never even shouted a warning, just shot him in the leg. He dropped like dead weight. There was enough blood that everyone in the yard thought he wouldn't make it. He did, the tough old bastard. Never learned his real name, since after that everyone knew him as Gimp. I thought about it, though. I used to dream about it. Every day in the yard, I'd stop, look, and plan. How would I do it if I tried? How far would I get? Would they shoot me, or would the dogs get me first? The Louisiana prison system claimed that the dogs weren't trained to kill, only to disable, but dogs were animals. With animals, instinct reigned. I was more afraid of the dogs than I ever was of a man with a gun, and I had magic to fall back on. Desert stretched on ahead, but we turned to go around the back of the prison, keeping our distance. The small figure I'd been following scurried up to a brick wall and paused. Razor wire topped the wall just like the rest of the fence, and the wall didn't seem attached to any buildings. It was just a stack of bricks where once there had been a fence. "Come," croaked the figure, and it waved me forward. I went. "Who are you? Why are you helping me?" "No time." A white hand shot out from under the cloak. Cold fingers wrapped around my wrist and pulled me forward. Something sharp bit into my palm, and blood welled. "What the hell, man?" I tried to jerk my hand back. The figure held tight. As we grappled for control of my arm, the hood fell back, revealing a familiar face. I blinked twice, just to make sure. "Jean?" Jean Lafitte, or more aptly the soul of Jean Lafitte, and I had worked together to take down an archon who'd started killing children. Jean's half-brother, Dominique, had become famine. Dominique was also a ghoul, and the archon was using him to eat the evidence of his crimes. Last time I'd seen Jean, he was headed to Ferry. I'd asked him to keep an eye on Emma for me. "What the hell are you doing in hell?" "There's no time," Jean snapped, and he slapped my palm against the wall in front of us. "Call your magic, you moron, and aim it at this wall. Make us a bloody door, or we'll be hellhound chow." I didn't like being told what to do, especially by the ghost of an uppity pirate, but I trusted him not to get me killed if doing so was in his best interests. With my bleeding palm flat against the bricks, I closed my eyes and called up my magic, directing it through the open wound and into the wall. Slowly, the brick dissolved, and I fell through an open void and into a small storage room. Boxes and jars lined shelves on all sides. A locked door stood dead ahead, my only way out. I turned just in time to see Jean stumble through the opening. Space zipped closed like a stitched-up cut behind him. "Could you at least tell me what I'm supposed to be doing here?" I asked him as he righted himself. "You drank the sap of the tree." He turned around and went straight to the door, pressing his hands to it. "Yes, I'm here looking for Emma's soul. What are you doing here? Didn't I tell you to keep an eye on her?" "I was." Jean grunted and moved his hands to the wall as if he were searching for some hidden lever. "She's a rather boring person, honestly. A bit obsessive-compulsive." That sounded like the Emma Knight I knew. At least he'd hung around enough to know that. "Tragically lonely," Jean continued. "Hopelessly devoted to lost causes like those heirloom roses of hers and a certain foolish necromancer who's continually inventing new ways to get himself killed." "I'm not dead," I growled. He gave me an incredulous look. "Okay, so I'm temporarily dead, but it's a willing development. As I said, I'm here to get her soul. Morningstar conned her. If Lucifer Morningstar has it, you won't find her soul here. Ah, there it is." Jean pushed a loose brick in. The door slid open. He started toward the exit, but I put my hand on his shoulder, holding him in place. "What do you mean she's not here? She left the sap for me. It's got to be a clue." He shrugged my hand away. "I mean, your princess is in another castle." My jaw fell open. "Did you just use a pop culture reference that's actually relevant?" Jean rolled his eyes. "Not on purpose. It's all those games she played late at night. They must have influenced me. You would think two plumbers would be better prepared for a pipe transport system and land populated by irritated fungi. Perhaps it's because they spend so much time smashing their heads into bricks. Or perhaps logic simply escapes the modern male mind. Why else would you have come to the wrong hell?" Well, what do you know? Emma was a closet classic video game addict. That was the hottest thing about her yet. I grabbed him by the shirt and shook him. "You know something, Jean. Out with it." "Fine, I'll tell you. Just watch this shirt." He smoothed his hands over the ruffled collar when I released him. "The short version is this. There are multiple elves, each ruled by a different entity. Some of them get along. Most don't. None of the realms are pleasant, and you can't simply walk from one into others. There are rules, gates, keys. You need the right key to open the right door at the right time. Morningstar's Earl is accessible only after moving through 6 others." Something Baron Samedi had said to me outside the morgue suddenly echoed through my head. 7 nights, he'd said. 7 moons, 7 gates, 7 tombs. I knew the rhyme. It was an old voodoo story about a way for the living to pass into the underworld. Traditional voodoo belief made the 7 days directly after death a sacred time, and that matched what I knew about ghosts and spirits. They were easier to call up within the first week after death. On the 8th day, shades took a lot more power to summon and even more to maintain their own physical presence. I needed to go back and find those gates, but if that was how I was supposed to do this, why send me to hell first? Was there something here I needed? Maybe one of those keys Jean had mentioned. Why can't I just open the gate I want? Jean struggled. "I don't make the rules. That's just how it is." I looked around and frowned. Why is the key to the first gate in the Norse underworld? Seems like an odd place for it. He sighed. "I only know 2 things. 1, the key is here. If it wasn't, she wouldn't have sent you. 2, I hate this place even more than I hated hers. I want to go back. So let's go." Jean gestured to the open door. Okay, so I had to find some magical key and somehow escape the Norse underworld, hopefully bringing the soul of Jean Lafitte back with me. Why couldn't things ever be easy? We crept into the empty hallway. The walls were made of rough-hewn red brick, the floor unfinished slate. Torches burned every few dozen feet, providing light in what would have otherwise been a darkened corridor. "Where are we?" I whispered to Jean. He took one of the torches from its resting place inside a metal hook. "The bowels of Earth Keep. The hellhounds won't come here. They're terrified of the place." That wasn't a good sign. Any place hellhounds feared was a place smart people stayed out of. Then again, smart people didn't break into 7 hells either. Jean pressed himself flat against the wall as we came to an opening in the corridor, so I did the same. Cautiously, he peeked around the corner before stepping out. I followed. A narrow stone stairway curled upward. He moved toward it. I should have saved all my questions for later. After all, we were creeping through a castle in the underworld, being hunted by supernatural flaming murder dogs. I just couldn't help myself. "What are you doing here anyway?" I whispered as we crept along the stairs, climbing up. "It's not by choice, I can promise you that. One minute I was wandering down the street, and the next thing I knew I was being dragged here by the most beautiful creature I had ever set eyes upon. Why does love have to be so cruel?" I rolled my eyes. "Yeah, Jean, you're a real Casanova." Jean's beautiful being was probably a reaper. Their job was to escort the dead to the after, and they were serious about it, some more than others. Some of them went out of their way to hunt ghosts and spirits who'd escaped the trip the first time, even if they weren't being a bother. Considering the number of supernatural entities that were in town during the tournament, his chances of getting picked up were higher than normal. The stone stairway spilled into another long hallway, this one with a crimson carpet running down the middle. There were no guards, which I found weird. A castle that size should have had guards at every choke point. Maybe I was just used to how the summer court handled security. Made sense, considering that was my only experience with castles and guards. "Do you have any idea where we're going, Jean?" "To find the key." "And where is the key? What does it look like?" Jean spun around, a horrified look on his face. "I thought you knew. I thought you did." He threw his hands up, exasperated. "You didn't think to mention this earlier." "Oh, you mean while we were running from hellhounds, or are we still doing that?" A loud bang echoed down the hallway. Jean shrieked and jumped into my arms, trembling like an excited chihuahua. We looked at each other a moment before I dropped him flat on his ass. The hallway boomed again, the sound of something big and powerful busting through a barrier. A growl swept through the air, moving dust from the ground like the wind. It struck me like a physical thing, bathing me in fear. My skin prickled, and my heart immediately began hammering in my chest. Cold sweat appeared on the back of my neck. It took everything I had to fight the urge to turn and run. A huge, hulking black shape rounded the corner ahead. Like the hellhounds outside, it walked on all fours and vaguely resembled something canine. That was where the similarities ended. This monster was twice the size of the hellhounds and muscled like a lion. A mane of thick green fire sprouted from its neck and raced down its back, illuminating a leonine tail. Feathered black wings sprouted from its back and skin-rending claws from its paws. Rotten flesh dripped from its bloody snout, revealing sharp yellow teeth. It turned its ugly face toward us, nostrils flaring. I took a step back the way we'd come. "Jean, what the hell is that thing?" He backed away a step before turning and knocking me aside. "Abandon ship! Every man for himself!" That coward. "Oh, no, you don't." I reached out with my power and clamped onto him, keeping him from going too far. He rushed another foot or so before the invisible leash of magic pulled him from his feet. Jean crashed face first to the floor and tried to scramble away, but I held firm. "Come on, Jean, you faced an Archon. You're not going to run from a lion hell dog." The creature broke into a run, big paws shaking the whole building every time they slapped against the floor. Jean yelped. I waited until it was almost on me before flattening myself against the wall, pulling Jean along with me. A monster that big had the advantage in a physical fight, especially since I was unarmed except for my staff. Luckily, physics was on my side. The creature tried to put on the brakes, but momentum made him slide even after his feet stopped moving. Giant claws dug into the carpet and ripped it from the floor, pulling it into a pile under the creature's feet. He slammed into the wall, and the carpet piled on top of him, trapping him momentarily under tangled fabric. I ran the way the monster had come, rounding the corner and stumbling into yet another long hallway. Jean sped in front of me. Behind me, the creature let out a long, echoing bellow and gave chase. It leaped onto the wall as it sped around the corner and then jumped across, gaining on me. There was no way I'd be able to outrun the thing, especially since I didn't know my way around. Think, Lazarus, think! I sped around another corner and nearly ran straight into Jean. Two skeletons stood guard in front of a huge iron door, a spear in one hand and a round shield in the other. They lowered their spears and marched forward at the sight of us, trapped between an overzealous guard dog and two literal boneheads with no way out. It was as good a time as any for a little magic. Power surged around me, thick and free for the taking. The air itself shifted and changed color, turning an electric violet streaked with shades of emerald. Holy shit, that was a lot of magic, and I'd barely pulled on it. No time to consider how cool that was. I had monsters to take care of. I pulled the magic into my body, funneling it into my staff and unleashing it toward the skeleton guards with a shout. They raised their shields as the beam of purple and green energy careened toward them. It struck their shields, igniting a rune in the wood that had previously been invisible. The runes glowed and drank in the magic. Shit! Ugly rounded the corner behind me, forcing me to move or die, again. I sprinted for the skeletons and swung my staff, batting aside their spears as they jabbed at me. One grazed my side. The stinging pain made me stumble to my knees just short of the door beyond. Both skeletons raised their spears in unison, poised to drive them into my neck on either side. The door swung open, the whole hallway trembling with impact. Spears froze mid-air, and the mutt monster behind me slid to a stop. Both skeletons dropped to one knee, facing the door as a woman strode through. Jean shifted his hands, which he'd put over his face, so that he could peek out. She was tall, her face all sharp angles. A dress of the deepest black clung to a perfect figure, while a dramatic collar made of raven feathers crowned her bare neck and shoulders. Black horns curled back on either side of her head, propping up a crown of black gold. Over half her face, she wore an ornate iron mask that left only her full lips completely visible. Hair the color of fire twisted over her shoulder. When she spoke, her voice resonated a deep alto. "What's this?" she demanded, her gaze finally lowered to me. The sensation of 1,000 panicked spiders crawled over my skin. "So, you're the escapees everyone is so worked up about." "My name is—" "I don't care what your name is. I don't care what you want. You have disturbed my peace. For that, you will suffer." I swallowed. That'd be hard to bargain or reason with. In the absence of reason, it was time to appeal to authority. "Okay, but before you torture me, you should know I work for Baron Samedi, and he'll be pissed." Her jaw relaxed. She lowered her arms from the door handles, her one visible eye widening. "Samedi? Do you know Baron LaCroix? Have you seen him? Did he mention me?" Smooth, Lazarus. If I told her I didn't know LaCroix, she'd probably go on to torture me. If I lied and said I did, she'd probably find out and torture me. Good going. Jean flitted forward to stand between me and the goddess. "Your most esteemed Majesty, allow me to introduce Lazarus Kerrigan, the Pale Horseman. He has come on a quest to retrieve the key to the cross gate." Her face turned sour. She crossed her arms. "And you are?" Jean removed his hat and bowed with a flourish. "Jean Lafitte." Her eyes narrowed. Behind them, wheels turned in her brain, deciding whether to squash us or hear us out. "He wants the key for the cross gate. LaCroix wants it back, does he? Doesn't even have the decency to come and ask for it himself. Men. They promise you lakes of fire and pits of despair, and do they deliver? No. They run off with some younger goddess and leave you all alone. So that's what the key was doing here. Apparently the guardian at the gate would be the infamous Baron LaCroix, the
Sample complete. Ready to continue?